Good afternoon. I'm Osamu Yamanaka, the DPR of Japanese mission to the United Nations. I feel both honored and privileged to be part of this first international symposium on youth associated with non-state armed groups, YANSAG for short. I'm also grateful to the Accept International for extending this invitation to me. Young people have great potential as driving forces for the future. To turn this potential into real driving force, however, youth need to be able to feel confident that they can shape their future and be provided with opportunities. Obviously, this is much more challenging when youth face fragile situations of peace and security. Thus, Japan engages with youth based on the human security approach, which calls for protection and empowerment of people, particularly youth. The meaning of protection here does not apply only to physical safety, but also to the right to education. Education allows youth to be well-equipped with abilities which can prevent them from joining or slipping back into armed groups, thereby serving as a precious tool to protect youth from violence. A study conducted by the UNDP entitled Journey to Extremism in Africa stresses the critical role that education plays in protecting youth from being trapped in armed groups. It shows that the longer the years of education young people receive, the fewer the chances of them being recruited by violent extremist groups. I should say that education is one of the most critical tools to reintegrate youth, including those who are associated with violent groups, back into society. For empowerment, Japan supports expanding youth employment opportunities in the aftermath of conflict. To take the example of Somalia, after the civil war ended in 2012, job opportunities for the youth did not exist and the income sources were very limited, which led young people, driven by the need for sustenance, to join piracy and armed rebels. Against this backdrop, JICA held a workshop in Uganda in 2019 for Somali's government officials and private organizations that support local entrepreneurs and middle and small enterprises, with the aim of helping more young people to run businesses in Somalia. In the long term, it is our strong hope that such post-conflict empowerment initiatives will make young people reliable peace builders. It is commendable that Accept International provides a range of initiatives aimed at empowering youth who are once associated with armed groups. These initiatives include fostering dialogue, providing skills training, and organizing reintegration workshops. What's more impressive is that these efforts by Accept International have achieved positive results, which will be highlighted in today's presentations by Mr. Yosuke Nagai, founder and CEO of Accept International, YANSAGs themselves, and other distinguished panelists. We are all looking forward to hearing their stories today. To conclude, the Security Council Resolution 2250 on youth, peace, and security, which is called YPS, has paved the way for youth to participate in peace processes. But more remains to be done. I hope this event will be the first of many similar events and one of the milestones for the international community to support more young people, especially YANSAGs, as agents of peace. I thank you for your attention.
All right, thank you very much for coming today. And actually, this is the first time ever event held by Accept International here in New York. So everything really messed up, but very, very glad to be here today with you and a lot online indeed. And so then actually in this keynote presentation, I'm gonna explain what we do quickly and what we have to think about now with my experience and my research with Dr. Erika of the Geneva Academy. And actually we don't have much time today, so let me go fast a bit. Yes. So my name is, yes, Yosuke Nagai, and I'm the founder and the CEO of Accept International. And actually, it's along with my work of Accept, I have been also working for some UN agencies as like expert group meeting member and technical working group member, and also just appointed as the one of the youth advisory board for UN Habitat, especially on social inclusion and the violent extremism, countering violent extremism. So actually, I established this NGO in the 2011. So and since that time, I have been working at this kind of work in this field with a lot of people. So actually then about what we do, so quickly, so we are really recognizing the limitations of military approaches in countering hatred. So that's why we focus on preventing, youth involvement in violence and also supporting a lot for disengagement and reintegration into society. And our efforts also include humanitarian emergency assistance and support for victims and survivors in the community to foster like reconciliation at the community level, little by little. And about prevention, forestry. So prevention is always to generate like comprehensive resilience for vulnerable young people, especially. So that's why we do a lot like income generation projects and followed by some vocational trainings, skill trainings, and also sometimes in very rural areas. In cooperation with some international agencies, we sometimes do conflict management workshops and trainings. And also, secondary, about voluntary defection and disengagement. We usually collaborate with the local government and the intelligence services, intelligence agencies, and the security forces to have hotlines, for example, for defectors, so that youth, including those within non-state armed groups now, can disengage from the chain of hatred. Also, we conduct really a lot of outreach activities, such as leaflet distribution and radio broadcasting in very contested area, and negotiations with community key persons like elders and religious leaders to promote defection more and more disengagement. And thirdly, so this is our main work indeed. So that is rehabilitation and reintegration. We provide a variety of programs tailored to individuals' needs for defectors from violent groups and prisoners and detainees, including the prisoner of war, especially in Yemen context, in detention and rehabilitation facilities. So we do a lot, basically. So start from care counseling, like every single day. And of course, we have like 5 days in the week. It's a basic education from like really basic education. And also we cannot forget religious re-education. And that should be done with like a seminar style, not like a one-way, lecture style, because, the overall like capacity is key. And of course, we do vocational trainings and the job management session, and after the release, we have to do, it's a long-term follow-up, at least for 6 months. So we usually take like 18 months at least for this kind of rehabilitation and reintegration project. Yeah, and also it's lastly, we do for care and reconciliation in community level. So in frontline areas, we also provide humanitarian emergency assistance, mainly to IDPs and support for very, children's education. Also, we facilitate dialogue programs for local reconciliation. Around here, one of the, our originalities is we usually assign our rehabilitation program graduates to some active roles in these initiatives for community and victims. And actually, throughout such actions, they can have experience of doing something good. something positive for the community people and for their victim people. And that is sometimes like a work as the kind of amends for, their victims. So this is what we are doing basically, and what we have been doing in some challenging places. Then, actually I'm thinking always on the ground and mainly on front line. So throughout my experience for years with over 1,200 disengaged combatants, it's really evident that a substantial portion of individuals in non-state armed groups are purely young people. And actually, it's really easy to imagine that in today's global agenda and torrent emphasizing youth. So we're always talking about youth empowerment, youth engagement. Let's encourage young people, so they're the key. So that's why there are so many phrases like youth gonna be the leader of tomorrow, and youth could be the agent of peace. So that's why we have to empower them, and they can change the world better. Yes, I 100% agree with that. Youth is key, yes. For that, we have to do youth empowerment and the engagement more, yes. And if so, young people, youth in non-state armed groups, as well as those who already have disengaged, have potential, logically, to embody the role of youth as agents of peace and the leaders of tomorrow. I believe this recognition can have significant and far-reaching impacts across various aspects, especially in terms of the peace building and conflict resolution. So then, to understand such young people and consider what we have to do for them, I created one term. It is YANSAG. So youth associated with non-state armed groups. So there is, how do I say, for this word, I really referring the term of CARFAG. So CARFAG is about child soldiers. So when we talk about the child soldiers, we sometimes use this technical term, CARFAG. So how about the young people? So that's why I created YANSAG. And the definition of YANSAG is individuals ages 18 to 35 years who are or who have been recruited or utilized by a violent extremist or non-state armed groups in any capacity. So this is just my idea for the definition of YANSAG. And for more details, so please check the our policy paper published by the Geneva Academy on IHL and human rights. So from now on, I really would like to explain a bit about selected findings from the YANSAG research. So actually in the paper, I did survey of 120 YANSAG in Somalia, Yemen, South Sudan, and Colombia. And Somalia, it's a defectors from Al-Shabaab and the prisoners. And also Yemen, it's a detainees of Ansarut, it's a Houthi, and ex-combatants in South Sudan, and the FARC ex-combatants in Colombia. So the reasons and background behind of their joining are very diverse, as you can imagine. So, but look at the voluntary, look at the rate percentage of voluntary. So from Somalia, actually, except Colombia case, except FARC case in Colombia, like for Al-Shabaab in Somalia, it's for Ansarut in Yemen, and various non-state armed groups in South Sudan. It's a voluntary, but percentages of voluntary joining is very, very low, actually. And at the same time, look at the persuasion. And this is by like friends and even family members, including same clan and the same tribe structure. And even we saw it's a forced recruitment and kidnapping for their joining reasons for the non-state armed groups. And actually, this is the reality. So that's why when we talk about the YANSAG, most of them have very, very diverse background. And sadly, they had this kind of very tough reasons behind of joining, like persuasion and forced recruitment. And also about the decision factors influencing disengagement from or defection from these groups, also very, very diverse. So the important point here is that it's a practical support for disengagement. So this is like a facilitation and a transportation support to realize actual defection from their groups in the very, very contested area, or even from it's a such group's territory indeed. And also we have to point out that it's a high number of the protection from attacks by the group and community. This is simply because it's a violent extremist organizations, especially kills its betrayers. So they always prohibit any defection. So that's why there's always risks for their defection indeed, especially from their territory in very challenging places. So that's why without such support, they cannot disengage, even if they have strong desire to defect. So this is another reality. And also these two, the practical support for disengagement and the protection are higher than amnesty for their actual defection behavior and the legal status. So that is really interesting, especially on the ground. Yes, at the same time, after disengagement, how is the needs? And the obstacles and their needs is really different from their needs for defection, the disengagement. So now they worry about, of course, economic difficulties. And also it's discrimination stigma. It's a from community. There are a lot, especially in very active conflict areas, because there's where there is no peace accord, peace agreement, and the conflict is still going on very actively. Yes, and of course it's a physical attacks from former groups, especially like Al-Shabaab in Somalia. They do retaliation, so they're always looking for their betrayers and defectors to kill them, to attack them. And also even they attack the community hosting such disengaged people. So that's why it's, this kind of rare attacks is very, very concerned. Yeah, this is a reality, and we need to focus on their specific needs, timely basis, to realize their reintegration, or it's a second life after their disengagement. So when we back to their background, average age at their joining is around 20 years old. But not a few YANSAG joined when they were children indeed. Actually, it's Erika Hapa already mentioned about that. This is a clear issue, as you know, because they were children at that time. And about the children, we international community have very, very comprehensive and very stronger international law framework. But there is. And now, they are no longer children. They are just young people. So how can we, approach them? What should we do for such people? Yeah. And this is YANSAG's estimation of young people between 18 to 35 years old in their former groups. That is also really interesting, especially for me. And actually, no one has specific data of, it's their age population, age ratio in such groups, because there's no data, and it's really difficult to do such like a data correction. It's impossible. So that's why I decided to correct their estimation, because they were there, and they know that somehow. And then look at the total, the percentages. So according to YANSAGs, most of people in their groups are just young people between 18 to 35. So they are also young people, youth, right? But totally left behind. So what we can do for such youth? So this is my big agenda, basically. Yes, and such young people, if they had opportunity to defect or to stop fighting, most of them would have disengaged from their groups. They told me, they answered to me on the ground. Except, actually, this is except with exception of FARC in Colombia, because that's a little bit different cases. But look at the Somalia, Yemen, South Sudan. The percentages of the would have disengaged. Most of young people, most of YANSAG who were there would have disengaged if they had chance. There is also reality. So there's no specific, very, very scientific data yet, yes, but this is information from YANSAG people who were there. So that's why we need to consider how can we provide an opportunity for young people in such non-state armed groups now. And if they have such opportunity for disengagement, they would have disengaged. So what we can do for them, this is a point as well. So overall, some selected lessons learned from frontline practice and research. So I have 5 points. The first 3, we have to think about comprehensive perspective more. Addressing the challenges faced by YANSAG requires more than just PCVE and the DDR, unlike counterterrorism. That's totally not enough. So instead, we have to put more priority on like youth empowerment and engagement is really essential. As well as the rights of a child, maybe, because as we already pointed out, it's a not a few people in non-state armed groups joined in the group when they were child. So maybe for the case, we can expand the discussion of it's a right of child, I believe. And followed by protection and practical facilitation for disengagement. So to enable their successful disengagement, defection, and reintegration, that we have to have the balanced approach that provides protection and practical support. It is really important. And also, we cannot forget justice and fairness, because especially in the very, very active conflict area, it's the legal framework and justice mechanisms are very, very, sometimes very weak. So that's why it's even for activities or for approaches toward the YANSAG, we have to think about this. It's justice and fairness, especially for justice, especially for victims and society at large. And achieving fairness in addressing YANSAG issues is really imperative. And also, we have to involve YANSAG individuals in designing and implementing approaches targeting their situation. So that is absolutely same with the discussion in the YPS agenda generally. We have to involve young people for the youth policy and the youth empowerment, youth project, right? So this is absolutely same for even YANSAG people. And finally, it is imperative that we have to listen to the voice of YANSAG more and more, providing them with a platform to share their story, to share their experience and their perspectives for peace. Because even YANSAG, they have potential to be an agent of peace. This is my opinion, by the way, but I believe, and to realize such kind of possibilities, we have to listen to their voice more and more. And how can I say, for example, what youngest want to say? Actually, the YANSAGs, a lot of YANSAG, that I met on the ground, they have messages to the world and even to their YANSAG people, YANSAG friends. For example, defectors in Somalia told me the message to youth in Al-Shabaab is please stop fighting. You can leave it now. We are waiting for you. And detainees in Yemen told me to the government and the international community, please accept us with open hands. We have nothing. We want to do something for family and community. And ex-combatant in Colombia it's an ex-combatant of FARC. A lot of friends of mine were killed after the peace agreement. That is unacceptable. Help us with protecting us and stepping forward for peace. So what I'm thinking is that we have been really overlooking this kind of voice of YANSAG people, especially in the very tough places on this planet. Again, they could be the unique peace builders because they have this kind of messages. And absolutely, this kind of messages could be the key, to approach the chain of hatred in the very, very contested area in challenging places, both locally and globally. So in the symposium, I invited 4 proud whole YANSAGs, and the one from Somalia, and one from Indonesia, and one from Philippines, and one from Colombia. So they have power to change the world, and they have the words that they want to say to the international people. So from now on, please let me pass to them for their introduction and a quick message to you. So can you change?
Muy buenas tardes. Mi nombre es Marley Yuredi Aya Gutiérrez. Tengo 29 años. Nací el 23 de agosto de 1994 en Granada Meta.
So, pardon you. So she said her full name. She is 29 years old. She was born in 1994 in a small town called Granada Meta.
Yo como joven reincorporada doy mi mensaje para el mundo. Es que la paz sí es posible. Hay es que luchar por ella y hago un llamado a los gobiernos a dar oportunidades a los jóvenes del mundo, principalmente la educación. Mi motivación para alcanzar la paz es que es algo de mis principios ideológicos. Creemos que la paz es posible por los medios menos violentos.
So she is a young woman and reinstated person wants to say this message to the world that peace is possible. She says we have to work hard for it. Besides, she makes the call to governments to provide youth with access mainly to education. Her motivation to achieve peace is part of her ideology principles. She says, we believe that peace is possible by the least violent means.
Okay, thank you very much. So how about others like Yusuf and Aziz and Abdul? Are you ready? Do you want to say something?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi taala wabarakatuh. My name is Aziz, a farmer and young father from Philippines. For me, the reason why I joined the group was because the difficulty of surviving through life challenges. That is why some of us join, because some of us what experience a happy life and escape the difficulty we face.
Okay, thank you. And how about others? Are you there, Yusuf?
Yes.
Okay, where are yours?
My name is Yusuf. magacayga waa Yusuf. kuley waxaan ku dhashtay Soomaaliya. waxaan dhashtay 1994 15 bishii May. maasha Allah oo fiicanahay, wax dhiba ma jiraan. dib aniga horta ku biiristii dadka macnaha qaladkii ugu horeeyay oo aan galo oo nolosheeda waxay ahayd dhibka ku biirista aan ku biiray qoladaas معناها argixisada ah qoladaas si awal qaladkayga macnaha adduunka aan ka galay ahayd qaladkii waan ka soo noqday oo koleyba soo dhaweyn fiican iyo dhaqan fiican iyo nidaam fiican aan la kulmay marka waxaan ugu mahadnaqayaa in laysoo dhaweeyey si wanaagsan leela dhaqmay dhaqan aanan filaynin oo macnaha ah in uu dadka ay ugu sheekeynayeen in dadka aysan dadka kale macnaha ayaga ka baxsan inaysan soo dhaweynin inaysan si fiican ula dhaqmin ayaguna dhaqanka ay sheegayeen dhaqanka aniga arkay labay kala yihiin oo iskuma dhigmaan waxa isla meel isla gelaya maaha marka dhaqan wanaag iyo waxaan arkay iyo soo dhaweyn fiican iyo qaab macnaha wanaagsan in leela dhaqmay in haddana aan rajeynayo insha allah intaas toga fiican inaan helo oo aan nolosheedii si wanaagsan aan kusii wato oo nolosha macnaha heer hadda aan kasii gaaro saasaan jeclahay marka waxaa waaye wadamada dhibaatooyin badan iska jiro kuleybo soomaaliya sideeda kale sida wadamadan kale hadda ukraine iyo falastiin oo kale problemka dhibaatada ka socda oo kale sida soomaaliya oo kale dhibaatadaas oo kale ka socoto marka wax badan dhib badan oo iska jiraa oo soomaaliya ay ka tahay dhibaato saaid ay ka jirto
Can you translate?
Yusuf said, first of all, my name is Yusuf. I'm Somali national. I'm living in Mogadishu. Born 1994, May 15. First of all, I would like to apologize to the entire world community for the mistake I made. Secondly, I'm asking the world community not to discriminate against me and others for my past mistakes. Instead, I want to be a useful person to the society, even we have done mistakes. We have a complicated background. For example, the country has experienced terrible conflicts for a long time, and other young people in Al-Shabaab has not received protection and empowerment opportunities by the society and government itself. We would like to the world to understand our background and not to leave us. That is a unique situation in the world. As you can see, we have currently there's a conflict in Palestine and the Ukraine, and so many media and the other high-level governments are reporting the situation there. However, we Somalia we have long conflict over 30 years, and we have Al-Shabaab terrorist attacks and fighting every day, including the capital city of Mogadishu, which I reintegrated recently after my rehabilitation period. Please do not forget us in Somalia, and I would like to see you think about how to achieve peaceful way in our society, where even young people who are joining Al-Shabaab can also reconcile and accept to as a potential youth in the society. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Yusuf. Amazing. And lastly, how about Abdul, Indonesia? Hi there.
Yes.
Okay, so you can say something.
Nama lengkap saya adalah Abdul Aziz atau Umar Abdul Aziz, bisa dipanggil Aziz. Saya berasal dari Indonesia. Kemudian kesibukan saya adalah berwirausaha dan juga mengurus sebuah yayasan atau organisasi.
Usually call me Abdul Aziz. I'm from Indonesia. Currently, I am an entrepreneur and managing an organization.
Saya ingin menyampaikan kepada dunia bahwasanya masih ada ketidakadilan di negeri ini yang menjadikan keuntungan untuk diri orang-orang tertentu. Namun, harus kita akui hukum negara mencoba untuk berusaha adil. Dan yang ingin saya sampaikan ke dunia bahwasanya kita bisa merubah menjadi lebih baik untuk kedepannya dan menjadikan diri menjadi masyarakat yang adil.
Word that there is still injustice in this country that benefits certain people. Nevertheless, it's important to acknowledge that the country's laws are making efforts to be fair. What I want to share with the world is that we have the potential to change for the better in the future and build a more just society.
Good afternoon. My name is Erica Harper, and I'm the Head of Research and Development Studies at the Geneva Academy of International Humanitarian Law and Human Rights. I would like to thank Yosuke for organising this panel and for the support of the Japanese government and development organisation for making it all possible. I regret that I wasn't able to be here in person, but extremely happy to be able to contribute some comments and remarks to the conversation via video. So at the Geneva Academy, one of the areas we're working on is understanding the potential for a resurgence in violent extremist behaviour and activity. We cast the net quite wide when we talk about violent extremism, so we include in this right-wing groups. Our analysis of the situation is that this is a current blind spot, that in our fast-paced world, anything that doesn't constitute an extant threat tends to be quickly obfuscated by other emergencies. Now, we saw this really cleanly with the Islamic State group. For the best part of a decade, it was front and centre of security debates for good reason. And then we get to 2018, 2019, with the group being militarily defeated, and it largely disappears from view. We got caught up in COVID and then Russia's invasion of Ukraine, currently the situation in Gaza. But more violent extremist activity in the future is more of an inevitability than a possibility. And we base this not on any particularly sophisticated intelligence analysis and more just grounded in logic. So today we know a lot more about how particularly this most recent wave of violent extremist groups operates. Early thinking drew particularly strong lines of causation between Islamic ideology and extremist goals. And today we see this relationship as a bit more complicated. So many of those joining the Islamic State, Boko Haram, Al-Qaeda, many of these, perhaps the majority, they're doing this less out of a sense of religious obligation or ambition and more out of, more as a reaction to marginalization, disempowerment, unmet group needs like group belonging. Religion was used more as a narrative to give purpose to this active agency. It allowed it to make sense. And we see this in both recruits from the global north and from the global south. And we need to take this seriously. I think for a long time the narrative was, what form of brainwashing, what form of manipulation would drive people to join a group that, is so violent, has such inhumane tactics. Whereas the question that we should have been asking, or at least one of the questions, should have been what situations must these individuals have been in for this to have been the better choice? So Yosuke, myself, we've spent quite a bit of time working with disengaged youth combatants, and when you spend time with them and speak to them, it's not difficult to have some level of understanding. In conservative societies, when you're young and you have no real hope of getting a job or getting married or escaping poverty, When there's a group, they might be offering you $10, $15 a month, but also camaraderie, a sense of purpose and direction. It's not that hard of a decision, especially when somebody is dressing it up as an act of religious altruism. So if we follow this logic, then eliminating the extremist group is never going to be a complete or permanent solution. We have to address the causes, and this of course means more inclusive societies, access to opportunity, political systems that are not corrupt or not nepotized. And this has not happened. Now, in the Middle East and North Africa, where we see the most extremist recruitment activity, this is not all that surprising. Youth unemployment, rentierism, authoritarian governance, these are all complicated challenges that the development community has been grappling with for decades. But the status quo is dangerous, probably more dangerous before, because group networks have become more sophisticated, and these groups, they've learned by doing. So what to do? Saying over and over again that we need to fix all of this, we need to create jobs and promote democracy, it might be correct, but it's not particularly constructive. What's perhaps more realistic is risk mitigation. And one group that we could specifically focus on, one very high-risk group, is youth who are returning from combatant groups. They're particularly vulnerable. From mine and Yosuke's research, we see that in many cases they'll be stigmatized and discriminated against. And this can come from all sides. Stigmatized that they joined, stigmatized that they perpetrated violence, stigmatized that they put their communities at risk of attack or high military scrutiny, scrutinized because they didn't deliver on the promises of the group. Even in the best cases, they will generally have learning gaps, and these are educational as well as socio-relational, and these are very, very difficult to close in young adults. Also very common is mental health challenges. So when you're exposed to violence at a young age, this comes with consequences. So for young people dealing with this and coming back to an unchanged situation, all of those regional drivers are still present. Group reattachment becomes a real risk. So we should focus on this group. We should. It's logical. They need jobs, they need psychosocial support, probably most importantly, they need meaningful stuff to do. And all this is kind of achievable when we're only looking at a small pocket of people, not an entire continent. But we're not prioritizing it. And it's important to unpack why, not to attribute blame, but to better understand the dynamics that we're dealing with. Two interesting things came out of the work that Yosuke and I did. First was how little donor support there is for this kind of programming, at least in the areas that we were studying. And admittedly, it's hard to craft an attractive proposal for activities that will benefit any group that can be typecast as connected to violent extremism. The more surprising thing was that, and not in all cases, but in a significant number, communities were reticent to this type of reintegration programming as well. And it was for various reasons, but one that was kind of cross-cutting was avoiding attention. They realized that programming would inevitably come with a higher level of scrutiny from security services and potentially the groups themselves from a retaliatory perspective. These are all tough obstacles to overcome, and I can't propose any hard or fast solutions, but putting them on the agenda for discussion is a good first step. I would particularly encourage donors to assess the unappealing nature of this kind of programming against the cost that a resurgence of ISIS or another similar group might bring. Another thing we could entertain or should have a deeper debate on is extending juvenile justice frameworks to youth, or crafting new frameworks that are specifically designed for youth. So rehabilitation programming, reintegration programming for children, it is much easier. Donors are more receptive, communities as well. And when it's done properly, the results are very good. Obviously, extending these approaches to young adulthood is a problematic proposition. Children are unique in terms of their vulnerabilities and their rights to special protections, but including youth also does have some logic to it. A key reason why we have a separate juvenile justice framework for children is based on rehabilitation as opposed to punishment is about brain development. Teens especially are cognitively inclined towards boundary pushing, dangerous behaviours. And this is because the parts of the brain that are responsible for impulse control, they develop more slowly than the brain centres around consequence appraisal and risk appraisal. This doesn't actually regulate until our late 20s, so well beyond a strict definition of childhood. If this is too hard to contemplate, we might consider extending juvenile justice programming approaches to individuals who were recruited as children but have returned as adults. This is being done in some places, and we should examine these situations more carefully to understand what results they yield and develop good practices. That's all I wanted to say in terms of remarks, but I'm hoping there'll be a situation to feed back in any questions you might have. And again, thank you to Yosuke for organising this panel.
衆議院議員の鈴木紀和です。本日、アクセプトインターナショナルのシンポジウムが国際政治の中心たるニューヨークにおいて盛大に開催されましたこと、お祝いを申し上げます。本シンポジウムには日本政府やジュネーブ国際人道法人権法アカデミーをはじめ多くの方の協力が得られたというふうに承知をしており、アクセプトインターナショナルが行う活動への高い関心と幅広い共感を示しているものと考えます。私自身が初めて武装解除や平和構築の重要性を肌身で感じたのは、2019年の1月に外務大臣政務官としてフィリピン・ミンダナオ島に出張した際のことです。自治政府の樹立に向けた住民投票監視団に参加をし、モロイスラム解放戦線の村田議長と会談をさせていただきました。ジャングルを進む中で見張りに立つ、そして銃を持った若者を見て、彼らが今後どうしたら平和な社会に貢献する人材になれるのかと感じたことがあります。若者は平和な社会を構築するための鍵です。18歳未満の子どもや子ども兵については社会的弱者として保護の必要は明確で、国際的な規範も存在します。一方で10代後半、20代を中心とする若者は紛争においては当事者として憎しみの連鎖の真っ只中におり、支援対象として注目されることは多くありません。しかし、支援から取り残されてきた反政府武装勢力にいる若者たちであっても、いまだ考え方に柔軟性もあり、またエネルギーにもあふれ、これからの社会を長い間担うこともできる限りない可能性を秘めているというふうに思います。アクセプトインターナショナルはリスクも可能性も大きいこうした若者を活動の主な対象としており、その着眼点について私としては心から共感をしている次第です。そしてまたもう一点、アクセプトインターナショナルの活動で特筆すべきは何と言ってもその現場主義だというふうに思います。ソマリアやイエメンなど公的支援が届きにくい地域に入り込み、地道にネットワークを広げ活動をしています。兵士の投降ホットラインを設け、投降した兵士に刑務所でリハビリテーションプログラムを実施し、さらにはプログラムを収容した元兵士を紛争で生じた国内避難民の支援に巻き込んで社会との和解につなげる取り組みなど、現場からしか出ない発想に私は感銘を受けております。一人一人の若い当事者たちに向き合い、あくまでも彼らの若者としての可能性に目を向け、憎しみの連鎖から離脱することを手助けしているのです。私はエチオピアのソマリ州にて民族紛争で 銃を持って戦っていた20代から40代の私と同世代の父親たちからお話を聞かせてもらったことがあります。そこで大変印象に残っている言葉は、次の世代への教育こそがまさに平和に直結するんだという言葉でありました。アクセプトインターナショナルの取り組みは広い意味でまさに平和につながる若者への教育そのものではないでしょうか。さらにはこうした現場活動にとどまらず、テロや武力紛争に関わる若者に関する国際規範の形成を目指しているというふうにお伺いをしています。世界をより良くする若者に国際的な注目を集めるためです。日本政府は今年6月に開発協力の指針となる開発協力大綱を改定しました。その中で NPO 等の市民社会を重要なパートナーに挙げていますが、アクセプトインターナショナルのこうした活動はどれも政府では思いつかない実現しにくいアプローチで頼もしく思います。日本の政治家としてさまざまな国や機関から受賞もしているこれらのイニシアチブが日本初であることが誇らしく、これからも応援をしていきたいと思いますし、人間の安全保障を掲げる日本も若者一人一人が持つ豊かな可能性に着目し、教育や包摂といった平和的なアプローチで貢献していきたいというふうに思います。今日のこのミーティングが盛会裏に終わったことを、心からお祝いを申し上げます。ありがとうございます。